Logic informs belief. That's something that I think is, well, that just seems logical to me. There's no point going ahead and getting something or going ahead and doing something without knowledge of someone's procedures and policies. And the way someone conducts themselves, especially when it comes to products like these, I believe is very important. What the fuck am I babbling about? Well, what I'm babbling about is a certain product by a certain Thomas Chain Exchange, and that is his Trackmaster and Tomy items. Now, I've had a bit of a curiosity for some time to see if he actually does any work on these, or just buys and sells them as is. Now, before I start, I want to preface this by a couple of things. Firstly, I haven't opened this parcel yet, so what you're seeing is going to be live, and that's probably the best I can do. I also want to let you know, I have a vested interest in making this guy look bad, but I'm going to try to rein it back for this video. Now, why do you ask that? Why do I say that? Well, I have an eBay store, okay? I will openly admit that. I sell these things in Australia. I do a certain level of work on them that I do not expect of other people, but I do believe is necessary in keeping these things going for the longest period of time. This is not going to be scathing criticism, unless it is really fucking bad. What this is going to be is a critical look at how another practitioner in the same business as I am looks after, services, or does nothing to his Trackmaster and Tomy products. With that out of the way, let's begin. Now, before I open it, I just want to find my fucking... Nope. I just want to get my tools ready. So what I have before you, before I open it, there we go, is a Trackmaster Freddie. Now, why Trackmaster Freddie? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, it was the cheapest item in his entire range that was motorized. It was $25 plus $9 shipping. Now, straight off the bat, I have a thing against satchels, but I'm not going to mark him down for that or tell you that that's bad. At the end of the day, satchels are a very affordable way to ship, and they allow the consumer to get far cheaper postage. With Thomas Train Exchange, can probably get these shipped off for about $9. I, who uses Australia Post, let me grab one actually, who uses post boxes, I am forced to pay, I pay about $8.60 for shipping, and then for the boxes themselves, which are these, I pay about $1.50 with highs of closer to $2. Okay, with satchels, when I started my business, I could get satchels. They gave me a bunch of satchels for free, and that probably would have kept me going for quite some time. But I believe in boxes partly because of products like this. There's a lot that can go wrong with a satchel, but it all depends on the amount of bubble wrap you use as well. So I'm not going to necessarily say it's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a different way of going about things. And it definitely caters to the consumer who believes that postage should be as cheap as possible. I believe postage should be as affordable as possible, yes, but also fit for purpose. And I believe when you're shipping something as fragile as these things, a satchel really is not good enough. Okay. That's a good amount of bubble wrap though. So, I mean, as long as it's bubble wrapped well, I don't see it as a real big problem. Okay. Do I have a knife? Yes, I do. Now, I gotta be careful, I don't want to cut this, because fucking... Okay. Now, bear in mind that this Freddie obviously isn't in peak condition. Okay, it's with one of the cheapest items he was selling. So let's have a look. Okay. So there's a bit of dirt around there. I mean, I'm not expecting them to be perfectly clean. Mine are never perfectly clean, because I think that's an unachievable goal unless you have an ultrasonic cleaner. Okay, so the stickers are in not the greatest nick, but I knew that buying it, so the pictures seem to have matched what I got. Okay. Do a bit of an in-hand appraisal first. So, it's not broken. Well, at least that part's not broken. Which off to a good start. Let's take it apart and let's chuck a battery in. Now the batteries I'll be using today for this test are the same batteries I use on my own items when I test them. Okay. Namely, they are over here. These are pretty much brand new lithium-ion batteries. And they're basically top of the range when you can buy in batteries. So let's give it a shot. Okay. It's a decent performer. Haven't really got any criticisms there. So, as you can see, just so we have a pretty good baseline of what's going on in there. Okay. Alright. Having a look on the inside. Now, I'm curious to see whether that's dirt or debris, or is that grease? Terminals are pretty nice. Although, again, I don't expect them to be perfect if they're not perfect in the pictures. There's a bit of dirt around that switch. Okay. There's a little bit of dirt that's landed on my bench. Too. There's your body in a bit more detail. Here's the inside. That's not too bad. At the very least, it's a period shell. I know that much for certain. Okay. Let's get started on the disassembly. Let me go grab a rag for you. There we go. I'll grab a clean one. So let's get started. Okay. So this is going to be a bit of a longer form video. Let me just bring this a bit closer. Okay. Alright. There's our item. So let's have a look. Now what screws does it use? It uses... okay. I haven't really got anything else. I don't really want to say too much right now. I mean... because I sort of want to reserve my opinions. Okay. Those two screws are out. Doesn't look like it's screwed in or anything. We can just pull that out. Pull that out. And now we can have a look at the components separately. So let's start with the wheel set. Okay, so there's some dirt around that axle. That axle's not... I would not claim that that's very clean. Yeah, look, that's not great. I'll openly admit. My reasoning is the more dirt between those teeth, the less the item's going to run well. And that hair around the axle isn't particularly nice to see either. But overall, it could be worse, but the problem is it really could be worse. If he's not touching these at all, well, that kind of indicates that there are a lot of worse ones out there. I mean, let's have a look at this, the coupling. This is pretty easy to clean. So, it's a bit odd. It's a bit disconcerting, as one might say. Here's the engine. Yeah, look, it's pretty dirty. So it's not particularly what I want to see. Alright, now let's open her up. Okay. Alright, so. Okay. So this is fairly dirty. I'll just straight up say. I think the camera does actually do a good job of catching that. The exterior is not amazing, and you can definitely tell there's a fair bit of filth in there. It's really evident though when you start looking at the engine itself. I mean, it's a pretty significant degree of filth. And again, every single bit of filth does degrade and does slow down and potentially can harm your engine. Looking at the main drive wheel set, I mean, that's a lot. And you can tell it's sort of seeped in everywhere. These are not too hard to clean. It does need a fair bit of work. Just cleaning work, really. It's not rusty or anything, which is always good to see. Next up, we'll go with this gear next. So, focus. So it seems alright. Okay, that's not rusty or anything. Okay, just one more time. Let's have a quick look. Alright, let me just pull up this for a sec too, so we can have a proper look, a bit more in depth. Doesn't look to be cracked or anything, which is good. Again, it's a bit dirty. Okay, next up is this piece. This is the main. It's one of the main components. Again, there's some filth there, there's some old grease. Yeah, okay. That leaves us with the final few components in here, which I'm now going to take apart, except I forgot about this one. But this one usually is pretty hard to break, but again, probably could do with a clean. At the end of the day, it's pretty evident he's not touching these things at all. But you know, I don't necessarily, well, to a certain extent, I expect something, especially if it looks this bad. You know? I guess it all depends on what the consumer expects. Because what I expect doesn't really matter too much. I'm very picky, and I sort of, like I said, I've got a vested interest in this not going well, but frankly, it's not going very well. Yeah, like, that's a fair bit of filth on the switch. Again, this is all cleanable, so it's a bit, you can't get this perfect, but you can get it a lot better than that. That's alright. That just leaves us with the engine. So this is a pretty typical engine. You get this in a lot of items. Let's check. Okay, so it's not broken, and that's always a good sign. So the item is not broken, and that I think is the main crux of everything that I've done right now, is that I wanted to see if it was broken in any way. And the answer would appear to be a vehement no, it is not broken in any way. But it's not necessarily being helped. Now, I've taken it apart. What are my thoughts? Okay. Putting aside, just ignoring everything and just putting my own perspective on everything first, I don't think this is acceptable. I still paid $25 for this, and the condition of the parts, to an extent, is fine, but it is by no means clean. And cleanliness can account for a significant amount of performance problems. And the dirtier they are, the more strain you're putting on components, and the more likely they are to break. I will say this, nothing on this is broken. That is something that I am pretty happy to see. Granted, it did not look like it was opened, so I cannot assure whether that means that he checks these, or whether he just got lucky. Again, a sample size of 1 is not great for this, but it was designed just to pick one off the shelf and just basically go, now what have you done? I would say not enough. But I do understand the perspective of Thomas Train Exchange in a more broad sense. Okay? He has extremely high turnover and extremely high acquisition. Ergo, it doesn't really make sense for him to go through and repair all of these, or does it? I mean, I'm not going to say that I have massive amounts of turnover or massive amounts of acquisition, but I do still have a significant amount, and I still put in the effort to ensure that not only my items, but a fair few other people's items are in good working condition, greased, lubricated, cleaned, fixed up, and shipped off. Now, the question really becomes, what do you expect as the bare minimum? I expect that as the bare minimum, okay? I don't even advertise this crap on my store because I just assume it's the bare minimum. Cleaning these things is sort of a necessity because they're electrical components. And in the case of this Freddie is 11 years old. And not once has it been maintained. And that's pretty typical. I mean, I've worked on items from the 90s that have never been maintained. And you can tell. They're not completely falling apart, but they need a lot of new components. This engine especially, a typical point of failure is this gear, which is why I was expecting either this gear to be broken, or maybe this gear. For 25 bucks, can I argue? He had it listed at 30. Now, a lot of what I sell tends to be below 30 when it comes to items like this, and when it comes to items like Trackmaster 2. Yet I still go in and I service all of them. The only counters I do not service are items that are less than a year old, because that is not oxymoron, it's just stupid. If an item's less than a year old, you've still got manufacturer's grease on it. I don't want to fuck with that. As far as I'm concerned, a year, 2 years, and then you need to start servicing them. And I mean, I'm only talking every year or so. Like I said, I cannot be certain this accounts for all his models. Maybe his more expensive ones have more work done on them. I don't know. In the past, I've seen some dubious things he's listed. Namely, he did list up a Thomas with a... I think it was a Thomas with a surprise face, with no back coupling, and a fairly warped chassis, for about 30 bucks. I think it ended up selling, and there was no coupling. It was just weird, and I don't quite get why he listed it. I guess the only other thing I want to comment on is traction tires. Now, I bought a Trackmaster item because it was the cheapest. I didn't buy a Tomy item. Although now that I've bought this, I'm tempted to buy a Tomy item to have a look. Namely because I want to see what he does in the way of traction tires. Again, for Trackmaster, there's not really any option. There's not really any available in the second-hand market in this color. So I just tend to use some from them dead items and just basically reuse them. In the case of Tomys, though, I replace traction tires all the time. If an item comes in this Tomy, even if the tires look okay, I replace them anyway, because you do not know how long rubber's going to last. So it's better to give it a fresh start than have to face problems with sticky traction tires 6 months down the road. I think that's enough ranting and rambling. Do I think this is unacceptable? That's up for you to decide. Do I know that you can do better? Yes, I do. Am I telling you to stop buying from the guy? No, I am not. At the end of the day, his range is quite impressive. I think what you need to realize when buying from Thomas Train Exchange is he is probably the biggest Thomas reseller in the Southern Hemisphere. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's got the breadth of abilities, especially when it comes to Tomy and Trackmasters that he's selling. My only concern, as with anything else, is when you start buying the more expensive items, does the quality of service increase? Or are we still just talking about throwing items unserviced back into the marketplace? I don't have the answer to that, but I would love to hear comments. Honestly, this video is sort of one of the ones where I want to hear some comments on this, because, man, is this a really interesting issue. And it highlights something within Thomas reselling that I want to get more perspective on. Is do people think that this cleaning and servicing is a prerequisite for every sale and is to be expected, or is something that's only a luxury that's nice to see? Thank you all very much for watching. It's been a sort of a downer one, but bye for now.